I call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers, October 20th, 2022. All managers are present except Manager Loftus. No members of the public here for matters from the floor, so let's go to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Thank
Second.
you, Manager Miller, seconded by Manager Sando. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? On the consent agenda, we have approval of the October 6th board meeting minutes and the check registers, the general checking account, surety checking account, and wire transfers, and one resolution, 22061, which is appointment of an additional TAC member for the Land and Water Partnership Initiative. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Manager Hajmati? Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Maxwell. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The only meeting I've had the last 2 weeks is that wonderful groundbreaking last week that we all got to attend. That was quite a nice event, and staff did a great job for us. Very exciting. And I think it was gratifying that everyone kept talking about partnership, and that was a big theme there. Manager Miller, can you give us a report from the Policy and Planning Committee meeting?
We discussed, we didn't review the Edina local water plan that they submit to us for a comment, and they submit to the Metro Council for approval. There's some issues, long-term issues that need to be looked at in terms of climate impact, and our current rules don't address that. We're going to discuss with the city and their policymakers and staff.
Thank you. The Metro Mod met earlier this week. Manager Olson was not able to be there, but Managers Hajmati and Maxwell and I were, and Manager Maxwell's agreed to start off the report.
Thank you. The report would be Tuesday night was the mod meeting, and it was basically a good meeting. It's one of those ones that I'm still trying to learn a lot of all the letters that they throw out and say, I'm with this agency and that agency, and I'm going, all right, where you live. And but there was a couple interesting things I thought. One was they're talking about there's going to be a state project to do with maybe septic and well water, and I think it kind of got bypassed a little bit of the septic, but I think a lot of people don't know that a lot of septics in rural communities really run into the lakes instead of and not far enough away for the land to absorb it. So I think it was one of the interesting things. Another one was there was some talk about another gentleman was talking about some improvements to street sweeping, and I asked if it was was equipment based or if it was style based, and he said it was going to be both. So that's kind of an intriguing thing to say. How are you going to sweep streets better with a different kind of style? I don't know what that would be, but it'd be interesting to find out. Otherwise, I thought it was a good meeting, but like I said, it's a learning process when you're just trying to get involved in it. And there's a lot of different letters they throw out. So
There are.
that was it.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything, Manager Hajmati?
It was a very short meeting, and a lot of people were not there who typically are there. And I always keep my ears perked up for when there are possible financial resources for us. And I heard three, and I'm not sure, I'm going to share those with James. I don't know if we can use them or not. Justin Hansen from Bowser said that there's federal funding coming from USDA, in dealing with climate change and the impact on water. So, it may be possible for us to get some sources. The second one was Heather Johnson of MPCA on nutrient reduction strategies, that they're also having some funds available for that. And Marcy from the Clean Water Council said that there was some funds that they had available, and they put some of the links on the chat, and so I'm going to send those to James to see. He can check them out and see if they're any use to us. Other than that, the leadership is going to change, and I don't quite know what's going to happen with that. Turn it over to you.
I don't know who will be, which administrator will coordinate. I don't know which manager will chair, but that's being explored. We should have something by our January meeting, which is like the 17th, I think.
Because
So
Mark is leaving and Mary is leaving, both are leaving.
they're just stepping back from
Yeah, they're
coordinating
and they're leaving
during
from,
Metro
from
Law.
managing the
Yeah,
mod, so there's going to be a vacuum.
yep. I think the position's open. Thank you, Manager Hajmati. Was that,
I'm done.
okay, great. I'll throw out that Met Council said to watch for white papers coming in January. They'll be out for comment, and some of the topics were reuse, source water protection, water quality, climate and environment, available water, rural issues, wastewater. So lots of topics. And they also volunteered that Met Council staff will be happy to come out and make presentations for us. And let's see if there's anything else here. There are openings on the advisory, the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Stormwater Research Council. John Bellata announced that. Applications due by October 31st. And I had street sweeping. Oh, the business meeting of the annual meeting will be on December 2nd, which is the Friday. We have a meeting Thursday night. And that's what I have. Thank you very much, guys. Our upcoming meetings are in the agenda. As you can see, Manager Hajmati has the November 9th Citizens Advisory Committee, and we're meeting the first and third Thursdays in September, leading up to Thanksgiving. Anything to add there? Any reports? Okay, great. Then let's go to item 9.1, which is the public hearing, and Ms. Westerland presenting. So I open the public hearing for the Lamplighter Pond Water Quality Project.
It is on. All right, good evening, President White and Board of Managers. We are holding a public hearing for the Lamplighter Pond Water Quality Project to obtain public input on the project. The agenda is first a statement of purpose for this meeting, then a refresher on the background and scope of the project. Then we will move into the public hearing, after which I will outline considerations for public ordering, which is planned for the November 3rd meeting. The purpose of the public hearing is to obtain input regarding the Lamplighter Pond Water Quality Project as required by state statute. The purpose of the project ordering that is planned for November 3rd is for the Board of Managers to option to order the project. Here's an overview map of the locations we'll be discussing. The location of Lifetime is shown in relation to Lamplighter Pond and Northside Park, as well as Twin Lake. As a refresher on the project background, in August of 2018, the board approved a variance request for Lifetime to the district stormwater management rule for permit 18153. The variance was approved because Lifetime couldn't meet stormwater requirements on site. As a condition of the variance, a cooperative agreement between the district and Lifetime was made, agreeing that Lifetime would provide $490,000 in escrow, and that the district may use these funds to build a stormwater treatment project that would meet the goal of 7.2 pounds per year of phosphorus reduction. A condition of the agreement is that the district must take formal action and order a project by August 23rd, 2023. The board authorized a contract with Stantec to perform a feasibility study for a water quality treatment project at Lamplighter Pond. Ultimately, Northside Park was selected as the project location. The proposed project is a manufactured treatment device, or MTD, consisting of a series of filters. After being pumped through the filters, the water drains via gravity downstream to Lamplighter Pond. The project will remove 7.2 pounds per year of total phosphorus, meeting the terms of the Lifetime District Agreement, and the project is estimated to cost $289,000. This includes design, construction, and contingencies. This map shows the northwest corner of Northside Park. The red rectangle symbolizes the proposed MTD on Nevada Avenue.
Could you go back?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Are there any questions?
Did we receive any comments from the public?
We
in
did not.
writing? Okay.
Nope.
Any questions from managers? All right, then. I will close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I end my presentation, I just wanted to set the stage for the next board meeting
My
and the
apologies.
project ordering. Oh, that's okay. Before now, and then the district city cooperative agreement will go to St. Louis Park Council on Monday, October 24th. And this agreement outlines the city leading design and construction and the city taking on operation and maintenance, as we discussed at the last briefing that I gave. Also included in the agreement are terms that the district will be consulted on engineer firm selection. And the district is to approve final design and observe construction. And the project is to be completed by October 31st, 2023. And at the next board meeting, I will be in Duluth for the Water Resources Conference, learning all about floodplain. So another permitting staff member will be attending the meeting and presenting the public project ordering on my behalf. So I wanted to just prep the board for that and see if they had any specific questions about the agreement, but that'll be in your board packet for the next meeting once it goes to the city council.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Manager Olson?
Just a comment. We had a preconception of how this would be, and it was relatively contained with the Lamplighter Pond area.
Right.
And I like the idea that the city came up and said, we've got a slightly different way of doing this. We think it'll be better, and it's turning out to be a better solution.
Yeah.
In regards to that, we came back with all those terms and conditions that we wanted, and you've been able to get that incorporated. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a great opportunity to do it better than we had hoped for. And
Yeah.
really looking forward to seeing how it comes out. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it is exciting, and it's been a great learning experience to work so closely with St. Louis Park and to incorporate their ideas and just build on the partnership between us and the city. Great. Thank you very much.
Our next item is Resolution 26062, Permit 22106. Ms. Ernst is presenting.
Good evening, President White and Board of Managers. Tonight I'm going to be providing a briefing on an amendment to Permit 22-016, the Morningside Flood Infrastructure Project, which the board approved with conditions last April. Applicant is proposing to alter the approved plans, so the new plans must again be considered by the board. Additionally, I'll be providing an update on the cooperative agreement progress because it's connected to the proposed plan alterations. So first, I wanted to provide a brief refresher on the project location and the proposed improvements. So the project is located in Edina, specifically in the Morningside neighborhood, which is shown here in this highlighted area. And then the two main work areas are encircled in red. We have the Lynn Kipling area and then the Weber Park and Pond area. And then lastly, I also wanted to point out the receiving water bodies. So we have the Bidet-McCoska stormwater ponds, and then we have Bidet-McCoska. So tonight we're going to focus primarily on the Weber Pond area, which is shown here where my pointer is. And we're going to focus on that because that's where the proposed plan alterations would be occurring. So as a reminder, the previously approved plans included changes to Weber Pond. So Weber Pond was proposed to be expanded and extended into the Weber Woods area. So the Weber Woods area is here where I'm circling. So it would be expanded in there, and then the pond itself would be deepened. And both of those actions would have the effect of improving flood storage capacity. And additionally, there was also a predictive pump that was planned as another tool they could use to pump before, during, and after storms to create more storage in that, flood storage in that area. So these actions are still proposed, but the grading contours are proposed to be changed in order to support updates to the pond's operational plan. So the project is now proposing to have the normal water level of Weber Pond set slightly higher than originally. And so in order to have that higher water level, they need to change the grading so they can make sure that the safety bench is at the water's edge. So because of those plan changes, they submitted some new modeling and grading changes, and district staff and engineer have reviewed those again for compliance with our rules. So the project is still triggering erosion control, floodplain alteration, and stormwater management, and those grading changes didn't affect the compliance with erosion control and floodplain management. It just affected floodplain alteration. It just affected stormwater management rule. Like I said, we reviewed some updated modeling from their team so we could ensure that the downstream water levels at Bede-Makaska were not going to be impacted by the grading changes, and we've confirmed that there's not going to be any water level impacts to Bede-Makaska. And additionally, the homes around Weber Pond and around the Bede-Makaska stormwater ponds, the freeboard is still going to be maintained there. So therefore, with the proposed changes, they're still in compliance with the rules. So now I'm going to move on from the rule analysis and provide a short update on one of the permit conditions. So as you recall, part of the original permit approval included a condition to find a solution to mitigate the downstream water quality impacts we were seeing. Excuse me. As a reminder for everyone, the original water quality modeling we received was showing an increase in total phosphorus of about 8 pounds annually to Bede-Makaska. And that was due to the increase in volume being sent downstream into the stormwater ponds. This was increasing the flushing that was happening through the ponds. So the sediment and nutrients didn't have as much time as they normally would to settle out. So it was causing that to convey downstream into Bede-Makaska. So therefore, based on that finding, the board required that Edina enter into a cooperative agreement with the district and also the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. And that cooperative agreement required that they perform a feasibility study to find a solution to mitigate that impact. So since the signing of that agreement, Edina has been working with Bar Engineering to look into a range of projects locally within Edina and also downstream. And we've met with them several times over the summer to look over what the information they've collected so far and provide input on which solutions we'd like to see them look further into. And so the first thing they're looking at with these different solutions is, are they meeting the water quality goals? And then they're also assessing other considerations like technical function, operation maintenance, and permitting needs. So looking at all those together, we can decide what's the best option here. So from the feasibility work, it was discovered that Edina could unilaterally meet the requirement of the cooperative agreement to show that there would be no degradation to Bede-Makaska, which is the reduction of 8 pounds of total phosphorus from existing conditions. So how are they actually doing it? They're meeting it in they're meeting that no degradation through 2 ways. So first, as we discussed, they're going to be changing they're going to be shifting the normal water level up by a foot. So that has the effect of reducing the groundwater inflow to the pond, which reduces the overall volume and nutrients that are going downstream. And then secondarily, they're also updating their pumping plan. So now they're going to include pumping before small storms, so 1 inch or less events. And pumping before those small storms ensures that Weber Pond can capture all of the stormwater runoff from the surrounding neighborhood and then hold that for an extended amount of time, which allows for the sediment and nutrients to settle out to the bottom of the pond, and then they don't get sent downstream. So these actions combined reduce the total phosphorus to Bedema-Cosca by 6 pounds from existing conditions. So this means not only does the project result in a no net increase in TP, there is a reduction of 6 pounds. So they're going above what we asked. And further, it also has the effect of reducing the total suspended solids by about 1,600 pounds annually from existing conditions. So with both those things combined, they have met and gone beyond the permit conditions. And so despite having met that permit condition, Edina and the partners still see a lot of value in continuing to explore the downstream projects that could further improve the water quality at Bedema-Cosca. So as such, BAR is working on finalizing that report, and the partners are planning to meet in mid-November to review the options and see what interest there might be in partnering again for a larger project. So just to get you excited to hear those results later on, we've looked at a couple different things like a pumped iron enhanced sand filter or alum dosing of the ponds, and there's some really cool results, so I'll be coming back at a later date to share those with you all. President White, Board of Managers, to some of what you've heard tonight, the City of Edina is proposing to alter their grading plans that were previously approved by you all. So this causes the need for a permit amendment, which has to be considered by you. The project remains in compliance with erosion control, floodplain alteration, and stormwater management rules. And the grading alterations, along with the pumping operational changes, allows Edina to meet the condition of the original permit to reach no degradation to Bedema-Cosca, and they have done that and gone slightly beyond it. Therefore, staff are recommending permit amendment approval. And from here, I'll open it up to the board for any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt permit 2216 amendment?
Move approval.
Manager Miller, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Olson. Question, Manager Miller?
Yeah, where does St. Louis Park's water go?
I don't know exactly. From
Well, it surrounds that, St. Louis Park surrounds Weber Park, and just wondering where their water.
Well, I know from the water that's leaving Weber Pond, the storm sewer network, it does briefly pass through St. Louis Park before going to Minneapolis into Bedema-Cosca, but I'll pass it over to Chris if he has anything else to add.
Mr. Mann, go ahead.
Manager Miller, portions of St. Louis Park go into the northern part of Weber Park, and then the rest of it just north of the park go into the main trunk line along France Avenue, and then go on to the
So it goes to Lake California anyhow?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't really understand why raising it a foot makes that improvement. Could you say more about that?
Right.
Is it just that it slows
Yeah, so
down?
so because there's being more water held in the pond, there's not space for that groundwater to inflow, and the groundwater has higher levels of phosphorus in it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Manager Olson.
How many acre feet is that pond? If we're raising it 1 foot, any idea how many acres?
I don't remember off the top of my head,
Okay.
but I can follow up with you, Manager
Thanks.
Olson.
Mr. Mann.
I think it's about 10 acres, I think.
It's a big facility.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big pond, so.
Okay, so that's a lot of water then. Okay.
That entire neighborhood was a wetland in the early 50s, because my aunt lived across the street there on 42nd, and we'd go there as little kids, and when they were building those houses, they were pumping the water out of the basements.
That should have been a sign, right?
Yeah, it should.
Thank you.
Anything else for Ms. Ernst? All those in favor of the permit amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution 26063, Mr. Mock presenting regarding East Auburn wetlands.
President White and board managers, I'm here tonight to request authorization to release a feasibility RFP for East Auburn wetlands. I'll give an overview of the East Auburn wetlands and its position within 6 Mile Creek, Halstead Bay, provide a summary of the wetlands monitoring assessment that R&M went over last meeting, go over the RFP objective and goal, and then provide a tentative timeline for East Auburn Wetlands Restoration Project. 6 Mile Creek, which flows through the wetlands corridor, as you can see here, 6 Mile Creek starts just north of Pearson and makes its way through Marsh into Wasserman and all the way up to Halstead Bay. I learned today there is 12 miles of 6 Mile Creek in here. There are 2 existing projects along this corridor already, the Lennar Wetlands Restoration, which is the red at the bottom right corner, and the Wasserman Preserve, which is the center red. The East Auburn Wetlands Corridor is surrounded by residential with limited green and open space. Both the inlet and outlet move under major transportation routes with Minnesota 5 to the north and County Road 43 to the south. The wetlands corridor is comprised of emergent aquatic beds, scrub, shrub, and unconsolidated wetlands, with cell 1 being in red on the side insert, being our main focus for this, and that is an emergent and shallow marsh. The assessment done by R&M and Stantec influenced the decision to look at cell 1 as the main source. And the assessment kind of concluded there is high phosphorus in the soils, the phosphorus is diffusing into groundwater, and the phosphorus-rich groundwater is moving downstream. That was that was brought to the board's attention during the last meeting. Additionally, R&M determined that an average of about 135 pounds of phosphorus reduction could be, achieved into Auburn by doing some project in this wetland cell. And through that, they found 80% of all the total phosphorus going into Auburn comes from cell 1. So the RFP objective and goal here, the objective is to identify a consultant to address wetlands, nutrient loading, and nutrient export. And so to kind of help the board walk through this, we're taking what is an established contaminant removal and restoration process. They've done this all over the country with anything you can imagine. If you're familiar with Superfund sites, that's mainly what that kind of stuff is. Where it is unique is that this is a wetlands Legre phosphorus contaminant. And so we're looking at taking an established protocol and applying it to a newer field. And so what we're aiming for is an established process and a potential for an impactful and first of its kind MWD solution. As brought up by last week's board, or 2 weeks ago board presentation. That's why we're kind of focusing on that 11-acre smaller footprint to see what can be done. The tentative timeline, the original assessment was completed in September. The board was briefed October 6th on the results of the Stantec R&M assessment. And we're here tonight to request release of the feasibility study, which will run from October 21st to November 17th. You have the RFP and the full packet within your board items. And some projected dates are, we want to run the feasibility through the beginning of the year, and the goal is to have construction started by end of next year, November through December, February timeframe, as we kind of want to get construction done in there. So again, I'm asking the board to approve the release of RFP for a feasibility study for East Auburn Wetland, resolution number 22063.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move approval.
Manager Olson, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Miller, any questions for Mr. Mock? Good, we had the data before, so that's good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. We'll move now to a presentation by Ms. Cermak on Resolution 22064.
Good evening, President White, Board of Managers. I'm here tonight seeking action, approval to release the RFP for stormwater infrastructure data standardization. I'm going to kick off by explaining where this work and our 2D modeling efforts sit within the overarching climate action framework.
Then I'll touch on what we've learned through the pilot model to date and how those findings have supported the work in front of you. I'll walk through the key task areas within the RFP, the timeline for the RFP process we plan to run, and wrap up with a recommendation. So as we know, climate change has stressed both our natural and our built systems. This has brought along new questions that we haven't quite had the proper tools to fully answer, to fully quantify. And that's why Pillar 1 of our climate action framework is centered around developing the right tools to give us that ability to fully understand and quantify the impacts of climate change currently, and look out into the future to predict impacts and evaluate adaptation strategies. One of those key tools that we've identified the need to develop is the updated watershed-wide 2D model. To fund the 2D-wide model, the district submitted a proposal to LCCMR in 2021. So this timeline you see here kind of lays out how the work would have looked if we would have received funding in the 2021 cycle. As you may recall, we did not receive funding due to a clerical error, and so staff had to pretty quickly kind of retool the proposal for 2022 and think about what the impacts were going to be on this overall timeline. You can see here the work would have really built off each other sequentially, all leading towards the 2027 comp plan. And so with the idea of needing to wait a full year to receive LCCMR funding, we didn't have the luxury to shift all of this work out a year because that comp plan is that fixed target that we've been aiming for. So what that resulted in is really narrowing the window of time we have to build the watershed-wide model. And so we took a hard look at what work was included within that original LCCMR scope and compared that against our learnings from the pilot model so far, and tried to see if there was a bucket of work we could pull out from that original application to drive forward now in advance of receiving LCCMR funding, with the goal that we wanted to keep the narrative to the LCCMR proposal the same, and also largely keep the model build funded through those LCCMR dollars. So luckily we were well into the pilot model at that point. This was midsummer when we received notice that we weren't going to receive funding. And so we turned to the pilot model findings, and we had really developed what that automated workflow was going to look like, a key deliverable from the pilot model project. I'm going to walk you through slowly here an example of how the stormwater data sets work their way through the automated process that Kimberly has helped us develop. So we start with an original data set from a city. So in the pilot's example, we're working with the City of Edina's stormwater infrastructure data set. Kimberly Horan had to really dive into their data to gain a deep understanding of what they were looking at. And that required coordination back and forth with the City of Edina to clarify kind of the unique naming conventions they use and really understand their unique structure. Once they had that level of understanding, they could pair that with their understanding of the standard database we were hoping to get these data sets into, and develop what we're calling mapping tables. And really what that's doing is we're linking the fields and values in Edina's original data to the fields and values that are present in this standard database structure. Once we had these tables created, that's when the script that Kimberly built could draw on those tables to automate that process of turning Edina's data into this MGIS standard format. Once we had it standardized, we have another kind of bulk of processes that take place. And here this is more centered around filling data gaps, correcting some data issues, and creating some new derived parameters that the model will need. So that kind of creates what we're calling our model-ready data set. It's cleaned and ready to go and to be imported into either of the modeling platforms with just kind of one final step of formatting into the format that each model would require. So largely here, the process we've built out is independent of which modeling platform we end up choosing after the pilot model. And so we had to look at this process here, and it became pretty clear that this area highlighted in white here that we're referring to as data mapping was a really discrete process, discrete part of the process. But we also recognized this was going to be time consuming to scale watershed wide, because this is going to require us to coordinate and work with each kind of city and agency that has data sets within the district and generate those mapping tables. So this seemed a perfect piece to pull out from that original LCCMR proposal. So that you'll see that kind of removed from the updated proposal we submitted in 2022. And we had eyes on this work to commence this fall. In anticipation of this project, we have reached out to all of the cities and agencies that maintain stormwater data sets within the district. We've received most of those back. And this allowed us to kind of do a preliminary scan, get them organized and packaged to include them within this RFP. We really wanted the proposers to have access to as many of the data sets as possible to really fine-tune their budget and scope for this work. And it would show kind of the range they're going to see when they dig into these data sets. The RFP is pretty simple. There's two key task areas. We recognize that the one key difference with this work compared to the pilot is going to be kind of the relationship aspect. Who we coordinate with and who holds the knowledge of each data set is going to differ, as we work through each city. And so we really wanted to set aside time in the front end of the scope to ground the consultant in these data sets, really work with staff to understand the existing relationships and key contacts we have at each city, and then really define some clear messaging and roles around who and when that coordination is going to take place. And then task 2 is really all of that technical work, so diving into the data, coordinating with the city, and developing those mapping tables. And again, this work is really well defined through the RFP, thanks to our kind of learnings through the pilot. We have kind of example deliverables included in the RFP package that clearly show exactly what we're looking the consultant to produce. Pending approval tonight, we plan to kind of email out and post on the website the RFP tomorrow. Planning some time for questions back from potential proposers, with receiving final proposals on Friday, November 11th. We are not anticipating needing interviews for this RFP process. We're building in some time for follow-up questions, reference calls as needed, with the anticipation of coming back in front of the board on December 1st. So with that, I am seeking approval of Resolution 22064. And I can take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cermak. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
I'll take a motion from Manager Maxwell and a second.
Yes.
Manager Olson.
Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Cermak? This was a fun report to read.
It's a little technical, it's a little dense.
If there are no questions, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And the next item is also being presented by Ms. Cermak, Resolution 22065.
Great. Item 11.4 is also work that directly supports our upcoming 2D watershed-wide model. We are seeking authorization to contract for stream channel LiDAR collection. I'm going to touch on a little bit of modeling background that I didn't hit on in the last presentation. Explain for the board a bit more on what LiDAR technology is and why kind of right now poses a unique opportunity for us. I'll explain how the MnDOT contract is going to work and kind of what's included within that scope, and then we'll end with the recommendation. So the upcoming 2D model really looks to leverage existing data sets that are collected and maintained by other local, regional, and state agencies. One of the really critical data sets, especially for 2D modeling, is this topography data set. And we largely draw from the state's statewide LiDAR data set. However, LiDAR does have a few limitations where we need to gap fill. So how LiDAR works, it's either typically collected from a drone or commonly a fixed-wing aircraft, and it relies on laser pulses being sent down to the ground, and then it receives the reflection and the returns of those lasers and can interpolate that into what the ground surface is. You can see here on the left kind of the power that LiDAR technology now has. It's come a long way. We can pick up street signs, curb and gutter. It's pretty incredible the products that we can derive from LiDAR. However, the limitation is that LiDAR pulses don't accurately penetrate water. So we can't accurately portray our lake basins and our stream channels through LiDAR. So we typically have to kind of fill gaps within our lakes and our stream channels through other methods. So one common method within a stream channel is to collect manual cross sections. You can see here it does require a bit of manual labor. It's pretty extensive work. And this is a data set that we've had kind of on our mind to update for this upcoming model build. Largely this data set right now is sourced from 2012 when we did the stream assessment work. And you can see how we would kind of patch this data set into the state's LiDAR data set here in this figure on the left. However, back-to-back drought years have left the channel bed of Minnehaha Creek primarily bone dry, and this has kind of prompted staff to consider whether we could pivot our method a bit and rely on LiDAR to collect the channel shape information that we would normally use cross sections for.
Seize the moment.
We wanted to kind of stress test our crazy idea with the modeling experts, so we reached out to both private and state modelers to kind of see what they thought the value of this data set would be. And we unanimously heard that this would be an extremely valuable data set to collect for our upcoming watershed-wide build. So we then reached out to existing contacts we had at both MnDOT and DNR, who kind of are involved with the LiDAR collection for the state, to get some ideas on what the general costs of this would look like and how to go about collecting it on a kind of a short time window. And we were pretty immediately able to see that collecting this data through LiDAR would be a cheaper option than having to go collect it manually through cross sections. And not only would it be cheaper, we'd be able to receive a much higher resolution data set than we would ever reasonably be able to obtain through manual cross section collection.
Can I ask a question? All the creeks, or just the?
This proposal is just for the Minnehaha Creek bed. Yep. So we continued conversations with MnDOT. Pretty early on, they were really excited about this project, clearly saw the value, and they suggested we contract through them and piggyback on vendors and flights they had lined up already for this November within our area of the state. And to clarify too, this is a role that MnDOT has played before. They've contracted with public agencies that are interested in collecting LiDAR data. So how this would work is a bulk of the field work would actually be collected by a vendor that MnDOT's contracting with. So the actual kind of aerial acquisition of the LiDAR and imagery. And then MnDOT will be serving in a project management role. And because of the value they see in this data set, they've also offered to kind of do all of the calibration of the data set and ensure the vertical accuracy of the data. This work does come in just under $33,000, acknowledging that is over that $25,000 competitive threshold. Staff is considering MnDOT to be uniquely qualified to carry out this work due to their kind of statewide expertise in collecting this information. We did reach out to a private vendor kind of on the state contract list to receive a quote. So not only is MnDOT an exciting opportunity for partnership, they're also a financially favorable decision as well to carry out this work. So with that, I'm seeking authorization to approve Resolution 22065 to collect stream channel LiDAR.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Manager Hashmati moved and Manager Miller second. Any questions for Ms. Cermak? Manager Sando?
How do we use all this technology? How, the end game of using the technology, which I think is great, but how does that use?
President White, Manager Sando, I think the exciting thing about this data set is that it's going to serve us more than just uploading to our 2D model. Something I'm excited about is we're going to be able to really accurately just portray how much volume the creek itself can hold. We can kind of spatially analyze, how that breaks out into specific reaches across specific cities. We can use this LiDAR because of its resolution to actually look at substrate within the creek, something that we would have relied on, again, manual surveys to collect. So I think it's really powerful and going to be exciting to see what else we can use it for.
Going forward, if we have a water problem, like Tennessee and so forth, Mississippi, we know the capacity of the creek, right? So we can allow less water or more water through the creek.
Yeah, President White, Manager Sando, I think the true value here is we are going to have really high accuracy data that's building our model, and that just ensures more trust in the output and the results we're going to get from this model when we're looking at flooding scenarios. We're going to have just that much more confidence kind of in those results that we're seeing.
Excellent.
Other questions, Manager Olson?
Do you predict that we could use this information to maintain the creek as well in terms of its depth? What I'm thinking of is a Stantec initiative one time where we were concerned about how effective the drainage coming out of Lake Zumbra was, and then they discovered that the drainage creek had silted in. So what they did is they recommended that we take it back to its original depth, which the Three Rivers paid for and did that work, and now there isn't an issue with that anymore. So I'm thinking, are we in a position where the creek, we would have a known depth throughout the whole creek, and then we could maintain as needed?
Yeah, President White, Manager Olson, I can let Chris chime in, but kind of my gut reaction is one challenge will be we know creeks do change naturally,
Right.
over time, specifically after large flooding events like we saw in 2014. One thing I could see is, looking at this data set to see, in specific reaches where we have pools and riffles and kind of manage on a reach-to-reach basis on kind of what ecological habitats it's supporting. That's just one idea. I don't know if there's any others, but.
Mr. Meehan?
Manager Olson, yeah, it'll help us create, we have a point in time where we understand where the creek is and understand. It'll help us as always happens, whenever we're actually looking at this, we have super high flows, and it's really hard to get in the creek, so it'll help us have a better understanding where we may have changes in those, and then help manage and have a data point going forward. The other part too is the substrate that comes along with it. By having that, we'll understand where we have lots of cobbles, where we have a lot of silt and sand. That'll also provide us a data point of where we're having deposition, could have drainage issues in the future. So lots of great data that the district will be able to obtain through going and actually doing this process. So,
Yeah, I remember the secondary side of Minnehaha Falls where we had some collapsing of the sides, and then we had to get things back to normal. So that'd be a great reference point. Okay, thank you.
Manager,
You mean it can tell you what's on makes up the bottom of the creek?
Yeah, I've confirmed through Alex, our GIS wizard. Yeah, we can do spatial analysis on this data to kind of draw out where we're seeing boulders, just based off kind of the elevation change.
Manager Sando?
This would be a question for Alex or for Sal or Chris. With the creek so dry now, is there any, just to really walk down the creek, is there any adjustments that should be made at this time with the ripple of the rocks or boulders for flooding?
Yeah, Manager Sando, that's a great question. I was thinking about that actually. We have a flood response plan of what we should think about doing when we have high water, and the same thing could be said when we're in this drought period. Maybe we should always evaluate: do we need to collect another round of LiDAR. Is there stream bank repairs that should be made? I don't personally know or think we have anything lined up right now to take advantage of, but something to really consider in the future on how we use drought to our advantage.
How fast can 95 degrees get this done?
They are projected to fly it in mid-November to early December. We want to capture it after the leaves fall, but before the snow falls, so it's a very limited window. And then it's about, I think, 60 days to get the data to MnDOT, and they'll do some calibration. So I think we expect it, this winter.
So water is an issue. We don't want water in the creek.
Yeah, so now pray for no more rain.
Or snow.
Yeah.
Is snow also a problem?
Yeah, we wouldn't want, a snowpack on the ground.
Okay.
Then it would take away from the pictures.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so sense of urgency.
So my real high-level observation is that seeing those images is going to be even more fun than carp photos.
I think so.
I just want to make comment, that question that Manager Sano asked, we should put that on the agenda for board inquiries, issues, and ideas, because I think that's something that, is pretty obvious.
The portion about seeing the condition of the stream when it's dry.
Working on the stream, moving boulders
Have a
down
plan.
the street right now with
Yeah.
a front-end loader and adjust things. I don't know if the budget's there
No,
for it.
well, we wouldn't have a plan, in a shorter period of time,
Yeah.
but it would be something that we'd put in a work program for future drought.
Opportunity.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
Drought opportunity.
I know we jumped out of sequence, but
It's all good. Anything else for Ms. Cermak? If not, then all those in favor of adopting the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So we shouldn't be afraid of a drone flying all across.
It's going to be a plane. It's going to be a plane.
Oh, it's gonna be a plane, not a drone?
how high do they fly?
I don't know that offhand. Do you know the height? MnDOT's unique in that they have, access to fly right up to the MSP fence. So they have access to kind of all this airspace, which is another kind of unique benefit of going through MnDOT. Yeah, I don't know exactly how high. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then the board inquiries, issues, and ideas. We'll write down drought opportunities. Are there any other inputs at this point? Seeing no hands, I'll look to Ms. Christopher for the administrator's report.
President White, managers, I do have several items to pass along.
Can you turn your mic on? Thank
Here we
you.
go. Okay. So the first is regarding the CAC diagnostic survey. At this point, you should have received an invitation to complete the diagnostic survey from Samantha Mall. And this survey is the first step in the diagnostic process, which aims to check in on the operational changes that were implemented with the 2021 CAC alignment report. So it's been in effect for about a year and a half, I believe. And kind of in the spirit of continuous improvement, we'll be taking the results of that input from CAC members, the board of managers and staff to produce any new operational recommendations for the CAC. And if you haven't received that or have any questions about the survey, you can reach out to Samantha, our our engagement coordinator and CAC liaison. And then on a related note, with CAC, kind of through the recruitment and reappointment process, John Saldet and Peter Reckelbacher have both communicated that they will be stepping down from the CAC this cycle. Both expressed a deep appreciation for the district's work and their time on the CAC, and Mr. Saldet noted that in part, the new format and fewer meetings, he felt there was less opportunity for impact and that it was more constrained than in the past. So I know that James will be reaching out, or has reached out to both members, and will be meeting with them and debriefing when he returns. And this information will, of course, then feed into that diagnostic process and consideration of any improvements that we want to make. Another update.
I'd like to
go ahead.
respond to that. I think that's critical that we address their concerns, rather than just, this is the way it's going to be, because, and I'm sure that that's your plan, but I want to make sure that the board feels the same way, because I think they've done really a good job in the last few years. Many years ago, they were totally inactive. There was 5 or 6 members, and they wouldn't even meet annually. And we got them a regular number over the years and engaged them in real work that's been extremely helpful to us. And I don't want to dismiss the good work they're doing just in the name of efficiency, because I know it's a lot more staff work, but I think the quality of the work that we get from them is worth the effort.
And we'll have an opportunity to discuss and bring those ideas back when the diagnostic has been completed.
The problem is two of the important members are leaving, and I want to make sure that they reconsider, because we haven't. This is just a plan; it hasn't been adopted. I want to make
and Mr. Whisker is, as Ms. Christopher said, reaching out to them individually to have conversations. Go ahead.
Thank you. So another update is related to the Harrison's Bay Association, who formed nonprofit status within the last year, and kind of through their process of formation, their leadership has had a number of touch points with the district on topics including, understanding the water quality of Harrison's Bay and sources of nutrient loading. And so, that's involved communicating how Harrison's has a small direct drainage area, but is connected to Jennings and the larger Painter Creek tributary, which is largely driving water quality in the bay. They've also reached out about guidance on potential carp management in the bay, and have made connections with MACERC, and have received some level of funding, grant funding through LMCD. And then they've also been in contact with us about concerns about County Road 110 as a potential source of sediment into the west end of the bay, where in part due to drought, residents are exploring dredging to maintain navigable access to the lake. And so that's included, inquiries about some infrastructure that Mound operates, some underground treatment device, and the condition of that. They've also inquired about the district's property, the Dirks property, the Maple Bass sort of forest that drains to this area. And then they have submitted a data practices request for dredging records back to the 1960s for Harrison's and Jennings Bay that we're processing. And so all of this communication and meetings have been coordinated with the Mound City Manager. And most recently, the association has attended a city council meeting during their MS4 public hearing and raised concerns about stormwater runoff. And that has resulted in the city appointing a liaison council member, Paula Larson, to meet with the district and the county to investigate the source of silt to the bay. And there was an article recently in the Lake Pioneer that staff will share after the meeting regarding this topic. So staff will be connecting with the Mound City Manager again to understand any additional context around that meeting and the request, and the board will be kept informed on that. 2 other items, staffing updates. Maria Fregis will be joining the permitting team on October 25th in the permitting technician role. Maria studied environmental science at the College of St. Benedict's and started with the city of Shorewood as an intern in 2019, and then in 2020 took the role of natural resource specialist, where she's been working since, and has gained good experience in their erosion control program, working with the MS4 permit and other conservation programs. And so we're excited about her being added to the team. And then finally, I have water level updates. The Twin Cities has received over 18 inches of precipitation this year, which is 9.4 inches below normal and 3 inches less than we received by this time last year. This year currently ranks as the 20th driest year to date on record. We continue to remain in an extreme drought condition, which is the first time The district's been classified in extreme drought since the U.S. Drought Monitor was created 22 years ago. Currently, 4.2% of the state is in this extreme drought classification. The current level for Lake Minnetonka is 927.5, which is 22.8 inches below the OHW and 13 inches below the runout elevation. This is the lowest the lake has been in 10 years. Last year on this date, the lake was 6 inches higher than it is today. The dam has remained closed since July 21st, as required by the operating plan. And since the dam's closure, the lake has fallen another 13 inches due to evaporation. Minnehaha Creek is no longer flowing in most areas, as just discussed. And we are currently predicting a ½ inch of rain on Sunday night into Monday. Finally, there have been a few media inquiries in the past couple of weeks about the low water levels, and staff will be packaging these stories up in an email to share with the board. That concludes my updates.
Thank you very much. Any questions? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.